Alright, time to let that baby cool down. Hello, my fellow gun theorists. Welcome to Gun Theory. Today, I'd like to take a look at something most people don't realize factors into shooting. Movies and video games make shooting look incredibly easy because the soldiers we play as and see in these movies, they're great, they're experts at shooting. But there's one thing that I'd like to focus on in this video that makes shooting not as easy as you might think from video games and movies, and that is trigger control. I'm going to take a few more shots and show you what I mean. So we'll notice that was semi-decent trigger control and trigger discipline. What most people do when they shoot and they're new, inexperienced, and they think it's going to be really easy is what I'm about to show you. So, proper trigger discipline is we're going to gently squeeze that trigger back, and then when it fires and the trigger is able to reset, we slowly let up, and you'll hear an audible click as the trigger resets. But what most people do when they're new to shooting is something more like this. They start with their finger all the way off the trigger instead of taking up that slack and then pulling. What they'll do is they'll start way out here, yank, and then let all the way off and yank, and then let all the way off and yank, and it's definitely pulls your gun off of target. It's not a good way to shoot on any gun whatsoever. So another thing I'd like to do in this video is actually test a couple of different styles of trigger discipline with an AR-15 at 50 yards to see which gives us a better group. So we're over on the rifle range with our AR, and we're going to shoot a little bit with good trigger discipline and then with poor trigger discipline, and we're also going to measure the groups with those performances and see how we do. So let's get our AR up here and ready. All right. So I'm going to try to hold the rifle in such a way that you can see into this trigger guard. And I want you to watch my finger very closely on the first proper trigger discipline, then on the poor trigger discipline. So we can see that we're doing exactly as we did with the handgun and pulling the trigger back to where the slack is all taken up, and then we gently squeeze over that wall. And then we keep the trigger held down for just a second, and then we slowly let off onto the reset, and then we just keep repeating that. Poor trigger discipline would be something like this. Or not. So again, we can see that I'm just yanking on that trigger really hard. So chances are, we're probably not going to have hit much downrange with me yanking on the trigger like that, whereas the group probably won't be that good where I did proper trigger discipline, but it'll definitely be better. Now, one thing I do want to point out before we look at the group sizes is that this AR-15, its barrel is better suited to heavier ammunition, and as you can see here, we're using Winchester White Box 55 grain. So this AR-15 doesn't really like to stabilize those lighter loads as much, so the accuracy is going to suffer quite a bit with the ammo that we're using in this particular rifle. So normally, we would have to coordinate with other people on the range before we walk out here like doofuses and get shot to make it a cold range. But we're the only ones here today, so we can do that whenever we want to. Being in the area that I'm in, it's actually really hard to find a solid range. This place, to me at first, I thought it might be dinky, but I'll be honest, this is my new home. We really love this range. It's a fantastic place, and the price is mega right. So we have not actually seen the groups yet, so we're coming down live to show you guys how bad of a shot that I am. We did just adjust the red dot, so I'm not too sure what to expect here. Alright, so over on the left here, this is where I did proper trigger discipline. And it seems like for sure it's a smaller group. It's shooting high and left a little bit, so we're gonna have to adjust that. But you'll notice center to center of the furthest, if we want to count this flyer, which I will because, well, what's that, about 4 inches? It's an awful group at 50 yards, but it's a lot better than what's this, 6-7 inches, something like that. We're gonna have to adjust that red dot just a little bit. I'm sure we can see by that group size just how important proper trigger discipline is and how hard shooting can be, especially if you're not focusing on those little things like trigger discipline. But I hope you learned something. If you like this sort of content, make sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and maybe consider becoming a patron of this channel on Patreon. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Hot tops, hot. Ooh, shit.